Right, welcome to Pardon the Corruption, I guess it's called at this point. So we're going to go with that one S.
Oh yeah.
And the topics today, we're not going to do chit chat. We're going to get right into the topics, man. This is not a chit chat show. So
All right.
topic
All right.
number one, Fred as a playmaker. The reason this is a topic is because a lot of people say, oh, he's a two, but not a one. How comfortable are you as Fred with Fred VanVleet being your primary playmaker on the team? Primary playmaker.
Right. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think there is quite a lot of work to be done. When you look at Fred, you're right. I would put him more as a two than a one in general. And I think he works so well off ball when it comes to just catch and shoot and what he can do. Pretty much his game suits playing off ball a lot more. And I think that's something that's kind of played to his strengths in the past couple of seasons. But now he's moved to that point where he has to be a playmaker, and he's going to have to be the primary playmaker once Kyle Lowry is kind of moved on and done his own thing, maybe even retired. Do I think I believe in him now? No, but I think in the next couple of seasons, when he gets forced into that role a lot more, he's going to learn from his mistakes and get a lot better at it. I think one of the main things is learning how to deal with size, like defenders being just bigger and stronger than you. And that's going to have to kind of just be something that he adjusts to and becomes a better playmaker because of it.
Yeah, and how important is your point guard being your traditional playmaker anymore? Because we're talking about positionless basketball a lot, and playmaking from a team often comes from like other guys. Like Siakam is a great example of a guy who, when he's got his game on, can be a great playmaker and alleviates a lot of pressure from guards, and sort of reduces the necessity that guys like Fred have to consistently playmake. That's why I sort of give him a pass a little bit on the playmaking, because if you evaluate him against like a traditional point guard, yeah, he's failing on a lot of counts as a playmaker. But if you put him in the context of the Raptors and the other guys they have, some of his playmaking responsibilities kind of reduce a little bit, and they go more towards maybe other guys.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you bring up a good point is, Siakam might be forced into that playmaking role, and he might be the main facilitator in this team. So, I think it actually suits us to maybe even go towards that direction more for the Raptors instead of having Fred be the primary playmaker. And especially if we're going for one of those free agents to 2021 that everybody's looking for, right? If it's a Giannis, if it's a Bradley Beal, right?
So history has a lot of examples of successful teams that don't have a traditional point guard, like Chauncey Billups, 2004 Pistons come to mind. The entire Bulls had Ron Harper as I'm not going to compare Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen to Fred VanVleet, but there have been examples in history where successful teams haven't had a need for a traditional true point guard, right? So
yeah, you're right.
So you brought up Siakam there as an example, and one of the things, one of his areas for improvement next season is his handles. I think if you compare his kind of three things to develop, it's certainly his ball handling should be better. Maybe his three-point shooting can be a little better, and his passing needs to improve. But focusing on his handles, what have you seen from his ball handling ability that he's able to improve? Like how much room for improvement does he have in how he checks the ball?
I actually think he has, like, the sky's the limit. Not obviously he's not going to be Steph Curry out here and Kyrie Irving dangling anybody, but I think what we saw early in the season from him is kind of a glimpse of what we can get at his ceiling, or close to his ceiling, in terms of handles. Like, when I was watching a couple of highlights earlier against the Lakers, against New Orleans, very, very early in the season. And this is, coming out of the workouts, coming out of training camp, you feel good about yourself, you feel confident. And his dribble was actually really good. Like, he kept it consistent. He kept it low to the floor so that, if anybody's trying to go for a cookie, it's not going to be there. It was tight, obviously, and his handle was as tight as possible. When you see what he did in the bubble, it wasn't anywhere near what we saw in the regular season for his handle. So his handle took a step back, and I think that's because he didn't get a chance to work on it for 4.5 months. I think we'll be able to, at least next season, see him get back to what he was during the regular season. And then the kinks of it, trying to get a little bit tighter, maybe a little bit quicker, and just be a little bit more decisive with it. A lot of people think like just handles, and I say this as a former point guard, good sir, but a lot of people think a lot of people think handles is just about trying to shake your man off, but I think it's a lot about creating space. And you mentioned pull-up jumpers and pretty much jump shots. A lot of what Siakam has to work on is creating space so that he can get those jumpers off And that's something he'll have to work on during the offseason. But I think, man, his handle is going to be good come next season.
Yeah, so we talked about passing in Fred like moments ago. And I think if Siakam wants to become a great passer, it starts with having good handles. Because what's going to happen next season is teams are going to swipe at him just like Jaylen Brown and those guys did, because they know that there's a point in his dribble where he has a tendency to maybe pick up too early, maybe he dribbles a little too much, and that information is sort of out there now in the market. So next season, you're going to see more pressure on him. So he'll be forced to sort of improve his handle. And I think without that, he can't really become a great playmaker, because a lot of passing, as you said, creating space, and to create space, you need handles. So it's almost like it's like a step 1, 2, 3, and 3 is the passing, but it starts with his dribbling. I think he hasn't necessarily focused his improvements on his handles. Like if you look at his career like to-do list, what the GM or what his coaches have probably given him, his ball handling probably hasn't been the number one thing. It probably has been his offensive moves, how he shoots, and all those things. I think now there may be a shifted focus on his handling more so than it has been on the past. So I think with good coaching and with his dedication to it, we should see, I'd say, 1 order of magnitude improvement in his handles.
Yeah, we're going to see him do those workout videos with the gloves, the gloves that help the handles, and then the basketball wrapped around the grocery bag. He's going to be
a tennis ball. He's going to roll a tennis ball, Steph Curry style.
Exactly. Yeah, I see it.
So next, the Raps D, man. So against the Celtics, we kind of saw this, especially in Game 7, where whenever the Raptors went to the box and won, the Celtics sort of knew exactly how to beat it because they had seen it for 7 straight games. So the defense sort of became predictable. Do you have any sort of worries that the Raptors defense has been sort of found out and it's not going to be as easy to clamp down next year as it was maybe this year?
I think with any team that is really good at one area, one subject, there's going to be ways to exploit it. And the Raptors defense is something like, okay, everybody knows when they're coming to face the Toronto Raptors that they're going to be facing an arsenal of great defenders, whether it's OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Serge Ibaka to a certain extent, Marc Gasol, right? I think they understand that. And I think in the Boston series, we saw that, there could be some criticism about Nick Nurse's adjustments and maybe he didn't do enough adjustments. Maybe he didn't really tweak as much as we thought he would. But I think he is one of the more creative coaches in the NBA. And when you have a creative coach like that, he's going to go back to the drawing board and figure out different ways to create new different defensive sets. So I'm not too worried about that. But what about you? Do you think that there's actually a chance that we become predictable? I mean, the defense is something we've kind of hung our hat on for such a long time. You think it'll be predictable?
I don't think it'll be predictable. I just think it goes back to offensives knowing how to beat our lack of size in the backcourt. I think the way Tatum sort of exposed Fred and Kyle in the backcourt when those two were on the court, it certainly meant like, listen, these guys are in a box and one. We can still operate with our size because we can see over them, post them up a little bit. So I thought the Celtics found some holes in the defense. But overall, is it predictable? I don't think so. I think our off-the-ball defense overall has been great. I mean, 80% of the time, you're defending off the ball. You're not so much concerned about the ball handler, but you're trying to prevent other guys from getting position. And I think the Raptors in that respect are very good. I think they're top tier in terms of like figuring out where to be on the court from a positional perspective. I think one-on-one, they get beat a lot. One-on-one, Fred gets beat a lot. Kyle gets beat a lot. And even Siakam sometimes gets beat a lot one-on-one if he's like sort of out of position. So I think off the ball, we're solid. I think there's nothing to worry about there. I think on the ball defense certainly has to improve. And if there's one thing the Celtics series showed us, it's that guys know how to take advantage of our lack of size. And Nick Nurse has to come up with something a little different to adjust to that part. And I think that's my main, not even concern, but main observation of our defense.
Okay, fair enough.
Best Raptors center ever. Obviously, Gasol's leaving. I think he's leaving. I don't know, man. We got to stop, quoting sources like Legion Hoops. I'm a little. People want those retweets, man. They're gonna say anything.
I know, man. I know. Yeah.
But let's assume that Gasol goes, or what? We don't assume anything. But best Raptors center ever. Let me throw that out at you. Is it an obvious answer for you?
No, it's not a real obvious answer. But listen, if Samson Folk is listening, Amir Johnson, baby. But look, there's a lot of classic centers, and I think a lot of just centers that kind of have Raptors hearts. Like like an Amir Johnson, like a Bismack Biyombo. But it's crazy because you can't really pinpoint one center that is just above all elite. If Hakeem was here in his prime, it'd clearly be Hakeem, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to say Marc Gasol? Is it JV? It's between JV and Marc Gasol, realistically, in my opinion. If I had to take the option between one of those two, I'm going to go ahead and say Marc Gasol. Listen, he's got the championship. We wouldn't have been champions without him in 2019. Yeah. What he did against Giannis, what he did in the Bucks series and Philadelphia series against Embiid. It just goes to show you how important he was to last year's season. I'm going to miss him. The more I realize that he's not going to be here next season, I'm kind of worried about our defense. And we just talked about the predictability of it. He's going to be a huge part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer. You're right. But if I had to pick, I guess I'm going Marc Gasol. It's crazy to say.
Yeah, I'd say Marc Gasol for impact for sure. It's much like our second best player ever is Kawhi Leonard. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, after Lowry, I think it goes to him. Some might even argue that he may be better, right? And I don't know. I don't want to get into that, but for sure, Marc Gasol has had the most impact. JV has been the most consistent for the longest time. But I'll throw in one more guy out there who you may not have maybe thought of initially.
Andrea?
No, man, come on. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna go with Antonio Davis.
I like it. Okay, that's another one that's good, man. That whole era where the Raptors were like 7-8 years old, and Antonio Davis, he made an all-star team, right? He made an all-star team for us, which is a crazy thing to do when you're in such a random place like the Toronto Raptors, and Vince Carter is leading all the votes. I don't know. I guess Antonio, that's the trilogy, I guess you want to call it. So you go JV, Marc Gasol, Antonio Davis, and then you slip in Andrea Baraheni.
No. Andrea's not coming close to that list, man. Andrea is no. I could make a top 25 centers. Andrea would not be on there. Okay, so stop squeezing Andrea Baraheni into this. These got nothing to do with this.
Man. Listen, he still needs your all-star votes. Come on. Please.
Okay, so we decided on Gasol, JV, and then Antonio Davis. Okay, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Let us know in the comments because I have no idea. Between those three, take your pick.
Yeah. I mean, I could throw in a guy named Keon Clark in there for entertainment purposes, who was, frankly, one of the most amazing athletes I've ever seen. But let's move on. A guy you're not a big fan of. Does that guy have a rotation spot? Forget about the Raptors, but in the league, in Chris Boucher.
Wait, hold on. Why am I not a big fan of Chris Boucher?
Every time I bring him up, you kind of take a little slight dump on him for some reason. I don't know.
I don't know. No. I love the guy. He's a Frenchman. He's a Montreal guy. I gotta rep him. Boucher he definitely has a spot in the rotation somewhere in the NBA. Do I think it's with the Toronto Raptors? I don't think so. I think he'd work well in a team that's still developing, like maybe the Hawks, who need a backup center, or maybe like a Timberwolves or something like that. Something along the lines of where he can get a lot of minutes and just a lot more reps. He does need to bulk up, though. I think there's no question in that. I know Will Lou was making fun of him during the regular season about him bulking up. He needs to bulk up. That's just a matter of fact. You have to get bigger if you want to be a center in this league, unless you get unlimited range, unless he becomes like a 36% three-point shooter up, something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening. I think Boucher's most likely gone next year. I do think he built up enough value, though, throughout the regular season for one team to kind of take a shot at him. So I wouldn't be surprised.
And I wouldn't necessarily think he would want to come back for the Raptors because, as you said, he's a guy who needs minutes. He might even take less money to go play more somewhere else on a bad team, maybe. So I don't think it might be in his interest to honestly leave the Raptors. Personally, I would like to see him back as like a late bench guy because he is athletic and he does block shots. He does have range. And he basically has the same shooting motion as Bruno Caboclo, who we always said, oh man, it's an unblockable shot, except his kind of goes in. So I like that. I like the fact that we have this like a trebuchet. It's not even a shooting. It's like a catapult that goes. It's like that. I kind of like having that on the team just for entertainment purposes. So I hope he comes back, but I highly doubt it, and it's probably better for him.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Shout out to Chris Boucher. I hope you found a good team. Enjoy. Yeah.
All right, man. OG ceiling. You got any player comps for me? OG ceiling?
Yeah, I actually got into a really heated debate here on Twitter about OG ceiling because I went ahead and said Kawhi Leonard. Okay, maybe I was being a little too optimistic of how well he could develop himself offensively. I will take a Sean Marion if that's available. I will take anything in between a Sean Marion and a Kawhi Leonard if that is available. Both great defensive players. We know what OG can do on the defensive side. It's really just about offensively what he can provide for you, right? What do you think his offensive ceiling is? Offensively, I think in the bubble and in the playoffs, we saw him using his handle a lot more, driving to the basket with confidence. We saw him shooting a lot more off catch and shoots and kind of pull up situations that he didn't really do in the regular season as much. So we saw something clicking there. I'm not going to go ahead and say he's going to be Kawhi Leonard. I think that might be a little bit too brave to say. I could see Sean Marion, but I also see him being a little bit more of a threat offensively than Sean Marion was.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
And Sean Marion had a nasty jumper, like just an ugly jumper that was never good.
It went in.
It sort of went in for a year, but it was still a shot that defenses were like, sure, buddy, if you want to take that, go ahead. Like it wasn't like, oh, let's go defend Sean Marion at the three. So I don't like the Kawhi comparison only because I find Kawhi is a much more composed offensive player. He is very deliberate in his movements. He kind of knows exactly what he needs to do beforehand. Well, against LeBron he didn't, but or against against the Denver, and even the game against LeBron in the bubble regular season didn't work out for him. But I don't like that comparison because I think the offensive games are too different. The comparison I like for OG is Draymond Green.
Wow. Even offensively, though, like the facilitating, you see that happening at some point?
I again, much like anybody else, I don't think we have actually even asked OG to consistently think about his offense. We almost like labeled him as a 3-and-D guy. We've never seen him through a lens of beyond 3-and-D. And I think this postseason, maybe our eyes were opened a little bit. That man, maybe OG is more than just 3-and-D. He actually does have an offensive game. I looked at, I made this like 15-minute video or quite a long video on OG, just breaking his game down. And there's certainly a lot more underneath the hood in terms of his offense than we are able to see. He's also extremely young, man. Like if we're gonna give Pascal Siakam like, hey man, go ahead, you still got a few years to develop, we gotta do the same for OG. And yeah, the Draymond Green offense is a stretch, but defensively he'll get there. 3-point shooting wise, he'll definitely get there. Facilitation wise, that's the big question. He hasn't.
And I would say even 3-point shooting wise, he might be already there because the way Draymond has regressed is.
Yeah. So for sure. And Draymond's not an amazing offensive one-on-one player, man. Like, you know, he's still more of a bit of a vulture, like just pounds on things, doesn't really create his own consistently. So I think Draymond Green is achievable for OG.
Okay. All right. Listen, OG is pretty good at those drop passes. So, you know, maybe he gets 11 assists off that. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. He's good at those.
Hey, it's a ceiling, not a floor.
You're right.
We're talking about a ceiling. Okay. Yeah. But we will talk about a floor now in Terence Davis. Terence Davis floor. What's the worst case scenario for Terence Davis?
Worst case scenario is Norman Powell. We get another version of Norman Powell. It's crazy because like when Norman Powell came in, we're like, oh, we have another version of DeMar DeRozan. And then when Norman Powell has kind of become this person, you're like, oh, now we have another version of Norman Powell and Terence Davis. He has to work on his defense for sure. That's without a doubt. And that's going to happen as a rookie. You're going to just learn from your mistakes, get a little bit better. I think shot selection wise, he has to get a lot better too. But his floor, it kind of makes sense to be what Norm is right now. Kind of an inconsistent guy. He can catch fire and go on crazy streaks. And he can be an offensive weapon off of the bench. That's his floor. His ceiling is he could be an all-star in this league if he really wanted to, realistically. I don't know if that's something that he's really going to get to. But again, Terence Davis is just – it's crazy to see that we found this random gem out of nowhere in a summer league. And, you know, credit to the Raptors organization for doing that. You found another guy that could kind of replace Norm, and now Norm is tradable. You know, Norm is good. You could trade him for the highest bidder, in my opinion. Yeah. So,
and man, you stole my thunder because Norm was my answer to this one as well. It was for sure. It was Norm. And I'll just pick up on that point on like organizational continuity. Like you're not going to be able to pay everybody all the time. Right. And it's so important that you're able to find like for like replacements within your contention window. And yeah, man, it sucks for Norm. I don't think the Raptors will pay him. And the exact reason is this: we have sort of a like for like replacement for him. Yep. And to me, that is like critical in any sort of team building because you're not going to be able to pay everybody. And at some point, you just got to kick out something you actually do like and replace it with somewhat a lesser version of that person, knowing that in 1 or 2 years, even maybe sooner, you might get there. And Norm and Terence are, they fit like this into that mold.
Do you think that makes, like, in the locker room, do you think that makes a guy like Norm not like Terence Davis? Because I know in high school it was like that, when you had a guy who was your shooting guard, who's spot-up shooter, and you're like, damn, he's taking my spot. Is it like, you think that's like that in the locker room too?
I mean, it has to be. It's just human nature is competitive. You're competing for minutes. You're competing for money. You're competing for fame. You're competing for everything. Of course, you're going to feel like that a little bit. I know you follow soccer too, and I follow soccer. And you always talk about the backup goalkeeper, right? Sure. The backup goalkeeper might be the most depressing position of all of sports, because the main guy rarely gets injured, and you're always just sitting there. Oh my God, this guy is like kicking. And the only time you have to show anything to the coach is in practice.
Yeah.
And he even discards everything in practice. So there's got to be some sort of animosity or some sort of like frustration built in there. In basketball, I think there's more playing time. You can rotate a lot more. Maybe it's less, but I definitely think it's there.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll see if there's any off-court drama with Norman Powell and Terence Davis.
They're both getting paid at some point, so I think they'll be happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Finally, most exciting thing to look forward to for next season. What's it for you?
I think we're going to see a mad Pascal Siakam. I think we're going to see him angry. I don't know if it's going to be right away, but I think a lot of the stuff that he's seen on social media over the past couple of weeks and since the elimination of the Raptors is really going to fuel him. And a lot of the support will as well. I'm not saying that that's something that isn't going to fuel him. I think he's kind of one of those guys that gets invigorated by both. But I think he is a man on a mission next year, and I'm excited to see Pascal. I'm not doubting him at all. I know he's going to do this. I know he's going to take another leap into whatever trajectory that we kind of put on him. But I think Pascal's going to come out mad, and that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, Pascal's a good one to pick, just because what he went through against the Celtics, and I like to call next season the response. Right. I mean, that's the theme for next season for Pascal Siakam, is to like, hey man, you punched me. Let's see how I respond. Because it's never what happened to you. It's how you respond to things. And he went through severe adversity right now. And it's it's actually unfair to judge somebody when they're going through that adversity. You have to always judge the response. So I'm going to go with Siakam as well. But I'm going to go a little more specific. I'm going to go the 4 games against the Celtics next season in the regular season will, I think, be fantastic. I mean, it's already a good atmosphere when we play them, but I think now that we have a little bit of a playoff history on our side as well, or on their side technically, but it's in the past.
It'll add a little bit more.
It'll add a little bit more. Other than that, I'm going to pick up on the OG thread. I'm going to see. Let's see how the post Kyle Lowry, even though he's still going to be with the team, the post Kyle Lowry Raptors deal in this transition year.
Don't scare me like that, man.
I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, he's probably not going to be back the season after that. So I'm going to see how well the transitory Raptors do in Lowry's, which will probably be his last year.
I'm willing to bet money that if the Raptors end up signing a Giannis Antetokounmpo, that Lowry will come back no matter the cost.
Okay, fair enough. Sure.
Whatever, yeah, but we'll see. Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the Raptors' young guns, the true young guns.
Yeah,
we've had some young gun variations over the years, which have been very disappointing. The Sonny Weems, Lonnie Baxter one comes to mind, but this actually is a future here. All right, man. I think that wraps up the show. If you enjoyed it, give us a subscribe or like or whatever you got to do, and we'll be back soon enough.